Well, today we're going to introduce to you the new Executive Director of the ARK mission. Her name is Sarah Campbell. I suppose most of you know that after over 10 years here as the Executive Director, I'm retiring at the end of June 2020. That was the plan from the beginning. Believe it or not, reaching that age, that magical age, where it's time to step aside. Really, things have gone really wonderfully for me here. Mostly because God's been good to us and we've had such great volunteers and support. But you know, there's a time to come and a time to go, and this is the time to go. So after nearly a year-long search, the Board of Directors invited Sarah Campbell to come and be the new Executive Director. She is the second woman to hold that position. And so we're excited for the future and for Sarah. So meet Sarah Campbell.
Hello, everybody.
Now, Sarah, I suppose that you may be as surprised as anybody that you're here.
Absolutely.
I think.
Yep.
Not because you haven't had some great experiences, but it's been an interesting journey. So maybe just take us back a little bit and start us along tell us a bit about yourself and how you think you ended up here.
Okay. Well, I was born to a wonderful Christian family. I have two parents that became Christians in their teen years, had kind of that conversion experience, and my dad felt called into the ministry. And so after I was born, he actually went to Bible college and became a pastor. He spent 10 years in Sudbury and then almost 20 years in Cambridge, and now as a missionary in Belgium. So I have that great heritage of parents who were in the ministry, and certainly I was raised in ministry. And so that has an impact on how you view the world and how you view interacting with others and what community is. And our church was a great part of my extended family. I'm the oldest of 5 kids, and the church family always surrounded our little family with lots of great experiences and love. And you know, it wasn't until I was well into my adult years that I realized that a family of 7 living on a pastor's salary is actually living what we would call under the poverty line. You know, I didn't know that.
Which is good.
Which is great, because God always provided everything that we needed. And, you know, we were never shy for food. We often had many people around our table. And of course, clothing and all those basic needs were always met. But more than that, great blessing. I can remember trips to Florida with our family because someone in the congregation offered us their condo, or opportunities to do other special family events, really augmented by the community of the church. And so, just a wonderful, lovely upbringing that taught me that there's great joy in serving. And so, that's the early years. When I was a teenager, I felt particularly called to go into ministry as well, but in a very unique way. I always described it to others as, you know, I want to amplify the voice of those who don't have an opportunity to speak for themselves, or who are often marginalized, don't get that opportunity to share their needs. And so I went to school in social work and social justice in a program that Renison University at the University of Waterloo offers, called Social Development Studies. And it's a mix of social work, sociology, and psychology. And so I really enjoyed that program. I did it part-time while birthing 4 children, and I got married after a year in ministry at Calvary in Cambridge, and we were blessed with kids pretty quickly. And so it was the balance of working in the social services, having these 4 kids, growing a family. And when I finished my degree, it became very clear to me that God had uniquely made me for leadership opportunities, because in every job I'd start the position and within a few months be promoted or asked to do leadership activities, whether it was program development or leading a staff team or whatever that might look like. And so after I finished my degree, I did a post-degree certificate in nonprofit leadership and management. And so I've always felt that my work, which has been in social services, is my ministry. And so I've bathed all of that work experience in prayer. And it was only when I went through the interview for the ARK position that I realized that there is yet another step to the obedience to my calling in my teen years around being in ministry and amplifying the voice of the marginalized. And so through that interview process and now serving here alongside yourself, Doug, and the team here at the ARK, I'm really seeing how when we bring God into the equation of these complex social issues, these issues of poverty and injustice, that the true freedom, the true opportunity for change is found in that great hope that we have in Jesus. And so I'm happy to be here, and I feel it's another step of obedience in my own life, and so it's very exciting.
Well, we're looking forward to how that's going to unfold, both for you and the ARK. Now, you have mentioned your family. You're married to Leighton.
Yes.
Not quite 20 years, I guess. It's coming up, but
we've been together 20. It feels like a long time.
And you've done that at school. And so, just how was that? How do you handle that as a working mom?
It's a juggle.
Yeah.
It's a juggle.
How do you handle that?
Sure. Well, I'm married. It'll be 18 years this August, and we have a 17-year-old son, Micah. So we got pregnant 5 months in. Our 5-year plan became 5-month plan. And so I have Micah, who's 17 in October. Isaac is 15. Jade is 11, and Jasmine is 9. It is a busy household in this COVID period. It's been very interesting to start a new job and do school at home, this online schooling. I can't wait. We're almost done. June is here. Let's go. But it's a bit of a challenge. But again, I think it's realizing how God has equipped us uniquely for the purposes that we're made for. So, I think my kids enjoy the work that I have done. But certainly, again, through the interview process for this position, one of the things that attracted me is that my kids can be in service with me here at the ARK
right.
and see ministry themselves, much the way I saw it when I was growing up. So this is also part of raising them. My partner, Leighton, is a nurse. We both went to school throughout our marriage. He went twice, first to be a paramedic, then to be a nurse. I've gone twice, and I'm just about to go back for my master's, so I'll be doing that part-time. So there's we have a drive towards education as a family, but we see that as blessing because those are really the building blocks of our life and also part of what we believe our calling is as a family and how we serve our community and each other.
Yeah. I remember you could do those kinds of things when you're young. Not so much now.
It's not easy. I always tell people, it's not for the faint of heart, and it does mean Netflix takes a back seat. Everyone was always telling me oh, did you see that? And I'm like, no, I really don't know anything about current media or what's going on because we're just getting it done most of the time. But that's okay.
Well, priorities, right? And I think that's what I'm hearing is living out that sense of calling and purpose that you feel that God has.
Absolutely.
For your life. So you have worked mostly, I think, in London in terms of your professional career. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit of some of the other things you've
I think I've actually reflected since I got here. Again, having the 4 kids, you're kind of in and out of the workforce, right? So my work life has been broken up into chunks as well. And I started with Family and Children's Services in Waterloo region. And I think what that taught me, what I was exposed to there, is really the traumas that people experience early on in life and how that really, impacts them. And of course, we see the outcome of that here at the ARK. From there, I worked in women's work at the women's shelters. I started with advocacy for women and children, and then went into counseling services, both in St. Thomas and in London. And I did that for most of the time while I was back in school. Then I worked at Leeds Employment Agency, where I did employment services for people with disabilities and learned a whole lot about ODSP and Ontario Works and how people get put into sort of silos around their income, and then also what it looks like to return to work from those income sources. And after that, I was with VON, so I went into the healthcare sector, and I was the executive director for Meals on Wheels. VON provided Meals on Wheels in Middlesex County, and then I had an opportunity to be the executive director for Meals on Wheels here in London. And most recently, I was with Housing, London Middlesex Community Housing, which of course we know is a huge need in our community, and not just ours, but across the country. And certainly is a need of the people that we serve here at the ARK. So when I think of that, I think, boy, I really have had a chance to look inside the systems that have either failed or are needed to help the folks we see here at the ARK. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity to take that integrative approach and then add that spiritual layer in hope that people will find a path for their future here at the ARK.
Tremendously interesting trajectory there, career to see, as you said, and often those are silos, aren't they? They're kind of, they don't always talk to each other very well. Maybe it's a little bit of an unfair question, but as you think back and boil that all out, what would be the one or two things that would be the most, like if you could solve one problem that could get at it, really make a difference, what do you think that might be?
I think, anyone who's advocated around poverty knows that the number one issue is income. Whether you're talking about housing or employment or just stability for people. If people have the income they need, they're able to find that stability. And it's interesting in this COVID era where we've kind of identified this minimum income to be about $2,000 a month. But we know that Ontario Works is, under $700 for an individual, and ODSP is about $1,100 to $1,200 for an individual. So all of a sudden it becomes more fathomable or understandable to the average Canadian why folks who are living with that kind of limited income struggle to find stability or a path forward. So I actually think we're in a really interesting time in our history where we need to be really thinking about what is justice in this moment, and how might we use what we're experiencing to think about this one change around income security for people on low incomes.
Yeah, I think that's really an insightful comment, that people struggle so much juggling to make ends meet. They actually have no mental or emotional capacity left to actually try and move forward, I think, right?
Absolutely. And
the system is so adversarial. Instead of being there to help, if you haven't submitted your form, you don't get a call saying, hey, where's your form? You get a notice, you're cut off, which is just more stress. And so I often thought, when you talk about rents are expensive, well, that's an easy solve for people on OW or ODSP. Pay them a decent rent allowance, which hasn't changed in years. Yeah. So that income. So it'll be interesting to see whether we learn that lesson or we forget it. We get back onto the middle class sets of issues.
And as part of coming on here at the ARK and the interview process, I shared with the board that I kind of have had a life verse that's really encouraged me throughout my entire career, and that spoke to me young. And in fact, my first son, his name is Micah. It's Micah 6:8, and the verse says, "What does the Lord require of you? But to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God." And I think, when I think about that question, what's the one thing? Well, are we being just as a society when we're not meeting people's basic income needs?
Right.
Is it merciful to judge people when they have so much less with the same bar that we would expect somebody else to be? It's not equal playing field at all.
Right.
And we judge so harshly. And as believers, how do we walk humbly with our God and pursue those things on behalf of those who may not have a voice? So I'm here to live that out as I have throughout my life, and as part of my calling, I really do see that verse as a guiding principle.
Yeah. You mentioned sort of the spiritual aspect, which is always underlaying your work and your driving motivation. Here it can kind of come more to the fore. It doesn't have to be couched or nuanced so much. We're not pushy with anybody here. We don't have conversations that they're not comfortable with. But on the other hand, you can have those conversations that other agencies don't have. So what do you think difference that makes and will make for you here?
Sure. Well, I've already seen the difference. You know, I'm, again, so blessed in the wisdom of the board and of yourself, Doug, to have done this recruitment process and have this overlap, because I've had a chance to kind of watch how things have run, and now I'm beginning to act within that organization. But what's great is when we can, one, pray for people together. So I've always prayed on my way to work, prayed for individuals, prayed for people whether or not they know it. But now, if there's something going on with an individual that we at the ARK are dealing with, we as a staff team or as a volunteer group may just stop and pray for that person. Well, I believe in the power of prayer, and I've actually seen that happen. Just this week, there was one individual who we've all been kind of concerned about with a health issue. And we tried everything we could with all of our kind words and encouragement to seek help, and it just wasn't happening. And we've been praying together for this person. And this week she made it into the hospital, and then our team was able to surround her by calling the hospital and advocating for her. And then on top of that, the social worker at the hospital had actually volunteered at the ARK, and so was able to help make that full circle around this person in terms of them not being alone. So really being, again, that voice of advocacy and encouragement, because we know that when people have someone, you know, behind them, they get a little bit better service.
They do, yeah. And so what I'm hearing in that story too is one of the differences maybe is people aren't just a number or a client, that they're actually, you actually see them as a human being that needs love and deserves love, and simply going through the motions isn't enough.
This
sometimes.
is just it. And I've told anyone who will listen to me from the day I started, what's the big difference here at the ARK? And for me, I would say every other leadership position I've had has been 80% of the work has been changing the inside culture of the organization to view people as important, valuable, and worthy, regardless of how they come to us. And here at the ARK, because of we see the fingerprints of God, we see these people as a creation with innate value.
Yeah.
That changes how we serve, and it changes the disposition towards service. And I'm thinking to myself, what capacity will I have with this team to lead when we don't have to deal with this culture issue around, we need to start with this very base piece of seeing people as people, seeing people as valuable. And when we can couch that in, of course, that people are the reflection of God. They were made in His image. It really helps to adjust and amplify the work that we can do together. So it's wonderful.
Psalm 107. Verses 27 to 28. At their wits' end, they cried unto the Lord in their trouble, and He brought them out. Are you standing at wits' end corner? Christian with troubled brow, are you thinking of what is before you and all you are bearing now? Does all the world seem against you and you in the battle alone? Remember, at wits' end corner is just where God's power is shown. Are you standing at wits' end corner, blinded with wearying pain, feeling you cannot endure it? You cannot bear the strain, bruised through the constant suffering, dizzy and dazed and numb? Remember, at wits' end corner is where Jesus loves to come. Are you standing at wits' end corner? Your work before you spread, all lying begun, unfinished, and pressing on heart and head? Longing for strength to do it, stretching out trembling hands? Remember, at wits' end corner, the burden bearer stands. Are you standing at Wits End Corner? Then you're just in the very spot to learn the wondrous resources of Him who faileth not. No doubt, to a brighter pathway your footsteps will soon be moved, but only at Wits End Corner, in the God who is able proved. Do not get discouraged. It may be the last key in the bunch that opens the door.
You're watching ARK Media, and today we're interviewing Sarah Campbell, who is the the new executive director, as I'm retiring after almost 11 years. And we're excited Sarah's here. It was a long search because it was a careful, thoughtful search, and I hope you're enjoying getting to meet her today. Sarah, you've been working here now for a month or a little bit more. What surprised you, if anything, when you came, or you didn't expect, or was a pleasant thing?
Well, I think I knew, because I kind of knew you and I knew a little bit about the organization, that things were going to be good. You know, but anyone can think it's going to be good on the outside, and certainly, having again led other organizations, what you find is like there's some good pieces, but underneath the surface, you got a mess to deal with first. And what I can say that I'm so grateful for is that the ARK is on great firm footing. Many people refer to you, Doug, as a foundation builder. Even you yourself say that's kind of my gifting, is that I build these deep foundations. And what I see is a very strong, solid foundation, both on principle, on spiritual grounds, on service, and then, obviously financially and in terms of the community that has been built. It's very solid. And so if you think of how foundations work, right, you go as deep as you need to go and as strong as you need to go for the structure that's to be built on top of it. And knowing that the board has hired me with the mandate of really thinking how to build off of this foundation, it's a little daunting because the foundation is strong and it is really well positioned for something wonderful to take place here. And I think lots of good things already do take place in this building, but it does beg the question, Lord, what is it that you want us to do? Because we know you love these people and you want to meet the need. And so already, as you know, we've started as a staff team and with volunteers, and even though we're not meeting in the building, we've invited our volunteers to join with us in prayer to ask the Lord, help us to see this community and see the need here with your eyes and your vision, and plant the seed of what it is you want us to do to build on this foundation. So I'm very excited, and I would say that's the surprising thing, is just how very solid and firm and certain this foundation is. So I thank you for that,
Well,
but I thank God and the community that supports you for that.
We'll come back to the vision piece in just a second, but I think part of it, I would say God's been good to us here and has sent just fantastic people around me, volunteers, like quality people that if I was going out, I wouldn't have a right to ask them, but they don't do it for me. They do it for what's in their heart. And I know you've only met a little subset of them because we don't have volunteers in, but I don't know if you have a reflection on some of the people you've met or...
Definitely. I mean, so as you said, we're not in normal times. I keep on telling people it's a weird time to be hired into an organization when you can't see the normal operations. And at the same time, it's an unbelievably hopeful opportunity to really see what the core services are and how we need to meet needs. So that has been good. But along those same lines, I've met some incredible people who just are uniquely gifted to work with this population, or are uniquely gifted to fill that particular need. And one of the first things that you told me, Doug, is look ahead, but don't worry. Like, look ahead, plan, use those skills, that's important, but don't worry. God always has us in mind. And early on, of course, we're in this COVID period. We need all this PPE, and I'm looking at how we're going to reopen services. And, you know, I think it was day 1 or 2, Wade said, well, we're running low on gloves. And so I said, well, you know, Doug, we're going to need gloves, and I can't really find them sourced online. I'm not sure what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And Doug says, well, have you prayed about it? So I'm like, well, I might as well do a one-line prayer.
Yeah,
Why not?
she did.
You know, and so, yes, then I could answer, honestly, yes, I've prayed about it, my one-liner. But that very day, I think it was before the day was through, someone called and said, you know, I've got $100 my neighbor gave me. What do you guys need? We needed gloves. They came the next day. It was within 24 hours, well before we needed them urgently.
Yeah.
And I thought, what a great example of how that can work. And certainly that's happened over and over in these last couple of weeks. We've had some hot days where we've been a cooling center. We went through water very quickly, and then all of a sudden we posted on Facebook, and within 2 or 3 days we're filled back up and able to share again. It's a wonderful strategy on sourcing when it comes from the source of all things. That's all I can say.
That glove story happened on Sarah's very first day, and I thought, God is so good, right? To show himself that way for Sarah on that very first day. It was $100. It wasn't a big thing. We could have bought gloves, but that wasn't the point. And, when people talk about, how things are, and I kind of, because I've been the leader, I get a lot. I feel I deserve much of the credit. Yeah, somebody had to sit in that chair, but there's just some fantastic people, and many of them, the same people who are volunteering, will also tell you, you have no idea how much this place means to me. This it saved my life, or it got me through, and it's the same people. So a lot of those key people have experienced the brokenness somewhere in their own lives. And that is really where the richness and the depth comes from, I think. So I know you've been working on it. You've been dreaming and thinking a little bit. I know it's early times, and it's maybe not a totally fair question again either, but what do you think might be coming, or what's God starting to show you, or where do you think the potential is? Or
Sure. Well, what I can say is God's already begun through this COVID period to ask the organization, ask our team, how can we meet the needs differently? We have to. We can't open our doors. We can't have our dinners. We can't build community the same way. And so already, whether we like it or not, God is demonstrating our agility, which I think is a unique and special part about the ARK, to be agile and meet needs. So we are one of the few organizations in the city, as an example, that has opened the doors for using the restrooms. Yeah. Now, to you and me who have a bathroom in our house, it's been inconvenient. You have to think, how far from home am I going? But, you can get home to the bathroom. For the folks we serve, it's life-giving. I can wash my face. I can have running water. I can, there's porta potties in this neighborhood, but anyone who's used a porta potty knows the difference between using a porta potty and using a restroom. It's been a real blessing to these people. And so what I see, first and foremost, is a very agile team of volunteers, team of very few staff, of people who support the ARK know that, we have only a handful of paid positions. But creative people who want to meet the need. So that's one thing. And the second thing is the gaps in service. I think that's another thing that COVID has really shown, is that there's all these siloed systems, many of which I've worked in, as you heard. And I think what the ARK can do and does do is try to stand behind people and advocate and help them to have access to those things. And I actually see that expanding in the near future. And longer term, we're recording this upstairs at the ARK. This is an underutilized space. Right. There's opportunity here for more services to be happening. In fact, we've just partnered with another counseling organization to provide remote counseling services. And in January, they'll start to be here at the ARK, both providing services to our population, but to our neighborhood as well.
Right.
So it's really exciting. That's all happened in 5 weeks.
Yes.
And I know that God has big plans for this place. We've got friends and neighbors moving in. We've got Indwell just turning the sod this week on their new housing development. I attended their gala online, and God's doing great things with them too. And I think again the ARK uniquely serves not just our street population, our neighbors, our volunteers, but our partners in community. And so I'm just excited to see how all those pieces come together. And I will say, I think that I know on myself, the volunteers and the board are listening for God's voice on how we can build on this great foundation.
When I came to the ARK, it had been having some struggles, and really I had nobody knew me. I wasn't from London. I'd only been in London a few years, not doing this kind of thing, and nobody. I mean, I could have been the worst leader in the world, but people took a chance on me, and funds started coming, and people just started showing up again, and I think it's because people really do have a heart for this work, what this place does, what it stands for, what its potentialities, all those things you've talked about, how we can touch people differently. All the other agencies are needed and necessary, and we support them and work with them the best we can, but there's something, we have our niche too. And so it's people want to support. So what I'm saying is, it's not about me, that what I was here for. I really, and it's people are going to support, and I trust that you will seize on to Sarah's initiatives and trust God with her, and let it flow, because there's so much more that could be done, that can be done, especially with a visionary leader who can build a superstructure, because I just build foundations. So I have a last word to the supporters and the folks. Sarah, what's on your heart you'd like to
Well, first
say?
I'd like to thank you, Doug, for this opportunity. Like I said, to find a very firm and solid foundation is a true opportunity, and it's an opportunity not for Sarah, but for this organization to flourish. So thank you. I think, well done, good and faithful servant is a great line for how you've served here. And I appreciate that so much. And to the people who support the organization, thank you for your faithfulness. And certainly I've seen in just, over this COVID period, the support that's come in. And I know that's because there are people who share in the vision and the purpose of this organization. And I hope to stay in the same vein and culture of this organization that is one of service, one of putting people first, one of remembering that it's God's superstructure. Right. Unless God builds this place, we labor in vain. And so it's exciting. I'm very excited to see what comes. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. We've been chatting today with Sarah Campbell, the new Executive Director of the Arcade Street Mission. I invite you to pray for her and be supportive. Come by when things let us come by and say hello and let her meet you. Drop her a line. But by all means, we trust you'll stay involved with what God is doing here at the ARK. If you'd enjoy these things, click subscribe at the end of the video and share it along with someone else as well. Thank you.
The pressure of hard places makes us value life. Every time our life is given back to us from such a trial, it's like a new beginning. And we learn better how much it's worth and make more of it for God and for man. The pressure helps us to understand the trials of others and fits us to help and sympathize with them. There's a shallow, superficial nature that gets hold of a theory or a promise very lightly and talks very glibly about the distrust of those who shrink from every trial. But the man or woman who has suffered much never does this, but is very tender, very gentle, and knows what suffering really means. This is what Paul meant when he said, "Death works in you." Trials and hard places are needed to press us forward, even as the furnace fires in the hold of the mighty ship gives force that moves the piston, drives the engine, and propels that great vessel across the sea in the face of winds and waves. By A.B. Simpson.
I was born just 10 years after the end of World War II, and all through my growing up years, you would hear periodic stories of leftover Japanese troops found in various jungles in Southeast Asia. And this went on for quite a long time, and one fellow persisted out in the jungle for 28 years. And he made his own clothes out of the barks of trees and leaves, and he ate what he could scavenge up, frogs and insects and plants and whatever. And it wasn't because he didn't know the war was over. They had dropped leaflets into the jungles letting the troops know they could surrender and it was the war was over. But he didn't trust them. He thought that if he surrendered, he was likely to be executed. So he didn't surrender until one day, 28 years later, some hunters found him and persuaded him that it was safe for him to come on home. Well, there's an example of a man who basically lived his whole life in fear. And some fears are justified and some fears are not justified. And I think we would have to admit that many of the things that control us in life are really a lot of unjustified fears. And we can be afraid of all kinds of things. One of apparently the things that people are most afraid of, it's in the top 3, is public speaking. Of course, getting sick, cancer is probably the number 1. Somebody asked the advice columnist Ann Landers one time, what is the number 1 question or thing, content in the letters she received, and she said most letters, more than any other, have to do with fear of one sort or another. And so fear is a real live thing for many, many people, and it paralyzes us, and it keeps us in our own little jungle sometimes, where we cannot live the full potential of our lives. Whether we're fear, whatever it is that's binding us up, fear of what other people think, fear of loss, fear of being hurt, all kinds of things. And of course, it doesn't mean to say that bad things don't happen. The question is where you locate that with faith or fear. And it's a shame to waste life bound up in fear. But the Bible says perfect love casts out fear, and love and faith go together. And the Bible also says in everything to give thanks. So those are really the better attitudes to live and to address those challenging times that do come into every life. I've been reflecting on the whole thing about the pandemic, and now we've pretty much got it to we're afraid of each other. We're afraid of being within arm's length of each other, or 2 arms lengths really. Wear the masks, don't be close to anybody. And yet we're social beings, we're social creatures. And so I'm wondering, is this going to change our natures, or are our natures going to be stunted by this? Or how are we ever going to get back to being what really made life worth living, and that is the touch and connection with other people? And so it's really a challenging time with fear because it touches exactly who we are as human beings. And when a tragedy happens or something, our leaders will often say, we're going to overcome this, we're not going to live in fear. But in point of fact, we often do live in fear, and our culture seems to be predicated on teaching us fear. Watch the news any given night and watch for the story that will come on that will suggest you need to be afraid of some new thing. And of course the solution to all that is to go and anesthetize your soul by buying something and forget about life for a while. So fear is a paralyzing thing, but what I want to say today is we don't need to live in fear. The Bible says God has us in the hollow of His hand, that as a Heavenly Father He knows how to get good gifts to His children, and that even when difficult times come and hard things come, that He goes through those things with us. So let me just say, have faith, not fear.